Hello, my name is C.J. Carl, and I'm with Metaphysic Television. And today I have as our guest Zarin, who is the author of the book Atlantis, A Karmic Memory of the Rise and Fall. It's a 4-book series of the history of Atlantis, from the very beginning of the structure of the continent and the beginning of the civilization through its eventual demise. And it's all the information is being brought in from channeling as a karmic memory of someone who was there, and additional information from, whether you want to call it Akashic Records, the general mass consciousness, whatever you want to call it. The information has been coming in with great detail. And the book is out, the first book is out, and now I have Zarin here to talk about the discovery at Donana National Park in Spain, where they believe they've discovered possibly remnants of Atlantis. And I wanted to get Zarin's input on this because his whole input on the details of Atlantis has a lot to do with his positioning and a great deal more. So, Zarin, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much, CJ.
What can you tell us about this discovery in Spain?
Well, I'm very excited about it, and I'll tell you why. It shows the very first tangible evidence of the symbol of Atlantis, which was well known to the ancient peoples, especially the Egyptians. And although I do not believe this is the actual site, because it is too young, they dated at around 5000 BCE, and Atlantis fell into the ocean 4,000 years earlier. And so I believe it may be more likely a reproduction of Atlantis. It is very close to Plato's description of the city, but it has, as I said, time elements, and there are some missing ingredients. One of the key things to be discovered at any of these sites will be orichalcum, which is the material that the Atlanteans used to paint their buildings, and it had an unusual quality. It glowed in the dark, more or less. It gave off an orange glow. But this particular site is very interesting, mainly because of the symbol. It is the first time it's been found, and now we know it exists.
So the symbol for Atlantis was on the stone pillar, the stone marker that they found there.
Yes.
And the interesting thing was that your first book, which was published a month before this video came out about it, has that sign on the front cover of the book. It's something that you channeled through.
Yes. The 3 concentric rings with the line in the center was the classic symbol for the whole society, the civilization of Atlantis. It was well known.
Now you're talking about, if they discover orichalcum. Now orichalcum was used in Atlantis and in its colonies. Did it have it all?
Yes, it was used in the colonies, that's right.
So would orichalcum be able to, was it strong enough to be able to still be found 10,000 years later?
The problem with orichalcum, it included as one of its principal ingredients the atell crystals, but it was finely powdered. Whether or not that still exists is doubtful because, as you know, something happened involving that. Mm-hmm. But I think what they would find is the remnants of it, which would mean that there was something else there, but it won't have the same chemical properties.
Right. Okay, so with this, now they believe that, they're saying that this is a possibility because they found the symbol of Atlantis. Now, if it's about 4,000 years later, it's probably not a colony of Atlantis.
It's not a colony.
However, I think we've talked before about the possibility. Now, just like 2,000 years later, a lot of places in the world copy the architecture of Rome. And what Romans, how they built things and things like this, we still use that today, 2,000 years later. And so what you're saying basically is that even 4,000 years after the fall of Atlantis, there were a lot of places still using some of the architecture in that.
The Egyptians were doing it. The Babylonians were doing it. Everybody was copying the idea of Atlantis, although the actual factual images had now become somewhat distorted over the 4,000-year difference in time. This particular site is probably one of the Sea People colonies, and that were the people who were eventually went to war with the Atlanteans and had a major battle in which they defeated Atlantis. However, what's really most interesting about it is the symbol that's aside the one for Atlantis. This figure looks very much like what you'd find in a cave painting in France. it's stylistically very similar. So it sounds to me like they're culturally related artistically to the same people that created those paintings in the caves. And
so you think that possibly it was the sea people that conquered a city that was there and then...
No, this is a unique structure. I believe the very competent archaeologists that have found and located this are doing their best to try to stabilize the foundation of this information so they don't get severely criticized by the established archaeological community. The thing that excites me most is the timing. It came out about a month and a half after I published this book with this symbol on it, and it just seems synchronistic to me. Now, I do believe they're going to find other symbols like this, and in and around 3,000 years from this, maybe around 9,000 BC. That's going to be the clincher, because this would prove that there may have been a colony there. However, what people have to remember is that the water levels in the oceans were 300 to 500 feet lower at this time. So many of the sites that they're finding now couldn't possibly have been at that time, because they would have been inland. The ones that they're going to find in the future will be at least 5 to 10 miles further out from where the deltas of rivers are. I think they're going to discover something in Turkey soon that's going to be quite shocking. And I also feel, I do like what has happened here, and I stand behind these archaeologists very much because I know their intentions are true. They want to prove what we all secretly know, that Atlantis actually did exist. It's just that archaeology, science demands proof.
Right.
This is it. The first symbol that has been recognized for centuries as the symbol of Atlantis is now concrete. They can't deny it's there.
So right now, with all this happening, it's interesting because there are a lot of tectonic activity areas within the world right now.
That's so true.
And as that happens, more and more things are likely to show up and to find more. But the whole idea, now we're talking about Atlantis, which was a civilization that lasted about 3,000 years,
Yes.
which is 3 times the length of the time that the Roman Empire was able to survive. So we're talking about a huge chunk of history that affected the entire world.
The entire world.
However, based upon your book, the probability is that they will never find actual Atlantis.
No, the actual site, when you read the third book, which is the destruction book, you'll understand why they won't find anything of the actual original location, but they're very likely to find some of the colonies.
And there's 5 colonies.
5 major colonies.
And so 5 major colonies, some minor colonies.
Quite a few minor colonies, and a few conquered colonies, if you want my impression.
But then it's interesting because so many places around the world, they're coming up, even off the coast of Japan, for instance, they have these pyramids underwater that they have no idea where they came from. Now, those aren't Atlantean.
No, they are not.
Those are from
Mu.
Those are from Mu civilization.
Yeah, Muin, if you want to say it the way most people can understand. The actual name of the civilization is so long, I don't even want to try to pronounce it. It's very, very Indonesian in its sound.
So with all that's going on, right now, the bottom line with the current discovery in Spain is that the probability is it's a clone of the original capital, Atlan,
yes.
Of Atlantis.
Atlantis.
And was probably created by people who had fought and dealt with the Atlanteans, and then for thousands of years afterwards worked throughout the Mediterranean area and other areas around the world and brought that architecture to their different colonies.
What's really interesting about this particular dating is this is also about the time they believe the Great Pyramid of Egypt was built. It's about the time they believe the civilization of Egypt arose, and of course the Sumerians arose. Now, interesting that I mentioned these particular civilizations because they also had major colonies in them. And there is going to be one discovered on the west coast of Africa in the area of Algeria that is going to be most illuminating, because there was not a colony, that was actually a secondary empire, which was a part of the book. You'll see why that comes about. The most interesting thing I think they're going to find in the future is in places that are connected to biblical references and Egyptian things that they never suspected were there, although several psychics in the past have made reference to these things.
All right. So that is the information coming from Zoran about the current site that was found over in Spain and what is likely to come. Now the book is called Atlantis, A Karmic Memory of the Rise and Fall. It is available at bookofatlantis.com and is available only as ebook at this time. The first book is out. 3 more are in the process of coming out, which will carry the entire history of, first, second, and third will carry the entire history of Atlantis. The fourth one will be an additional one, an epilogue that covers the lost journals of some of the major figures in Atlantean history and has some very, very startling revelations having to do with spirituality, as well as Atlantis and its effect upon the world. So you might want to check into it. We'll see you next time. Thank you for joining us.